Okay, hi, everyone. I am Robin, as Robin mentioned, and I'm going to be talking about how to manage those project grants and the big things that you're doing. And like I said, I've been teaching, like Robin said, I've been teaching project management for 12 years. I also do a class that's just on planning planning like a project manager because I'm really pro planning. And I'm going to try and fit that into the 15, 20 minutes that I have for that particular subject as I cover planning and examples of grants and tools and processes that can help. We'll go back into project management for that and then putting it all together. So this might be a whirlwind. I'm going to try not to, I'm going to try to end early is what I'm going to try to do, but there will be time for questions at the end, or if you guys have questions as you're listening, please just interrupt me. Yes. Just shout them out. Okay. So I mentioned I'm big on planning, right? Planning is key. It is, well, as Benjamin Franklin said, failing to plan is planning to fail. So it is a real, it's a requirement for anything that's big in, and going to take more than a couple of steps. You want to plan. Project management it's a set of best practices. Projects, of course, have been going on since the pyramids, right? But in the 60s, people started codifying the best practices of how to do projects so that they are successful. And in those best practices, they split them into 5 phases. There are 42 processes split among those 5 phases. 20 of them are in the first 2, planning and initiation. So planning is a big part of any project. So you want to make sure that you're spending time on planning, but you don't want to spend too much time. As I said, the initiation phase and the planning phase are the first 2 phases of project management, and they have 20-ish of the 42 phases in those 2. Initiation, I tell my students every class period, initiation should always include some kind of feasibility study, because the project that you are not capable of doing right now and you don't start is a success. Quite frankly, if you don't think about it and you don't have a good idea of what your bandwidth is right now, and you get started on something that is not, you just can't finish, that's guaranteed failure. And so not starting a project or going for a grant that you cannot fulfill, you can't go all the way with, is a success. So that's a big part of the initiation phase when I'm teaching project management, is doing that feasibility and really thinking about whether or not you're capable of doing the grant with the resources that you have, time, money, people. So the other 3, well, go with planning first. The initiation is just getting things started. The planning phase is where planning happens, and that is pulling together information, making sure that you have what you need to actually do the project. One of our librarians here in Nichols, who has many years of experience in this kind of thing, Kim Priest, she said, it doesn't hurt to have a general description of your community, role of your library in the community, history of your library, recent budget report of the past year, and facts and figures supporting your population in a single document that can be updated regularly. That way you don't have to look it up or start from scratch each time you apply for a grant. That's part of your planning process, is pulling all of that information together. And if you do it in a way that is updatable and referenceable, then you've got half of your stuff already done. So she continues with, I pull from former grant documentation all the time, keeping my grants in folders by the year on my computer so that they can be searched quickly. And I'm going to mention this farther back in the presentation, but I did want to say Carrie was talking about documenting, and you know, doing all this big project, and then maybe it's not done for another generation in your town, but the library a few miles down the road is doing it. That documentation that comes with doing a project and making sure that you've got everything collected and together can be of real help to that library down the road, or you might be the library down the road next time asking for that. So this planning phase pulls together documentation. It makes sure that you have everything you need before you start on the next 3 phases, which is control and command, which is kind of making sure that everything is happening. Execution, which is doing the actual work, and then closeout, which is important. And in my classes, I always have my closeout slide with a little cupcake because I'm a big fan of parties at the end of a project. We just recently did a new cataloging manual here at Nichols. And at the end of that process, the committee met and we got cupcakes from that small cakes place across the street. And we had a party because it's a lot of work to do a multi-month project, and recognizing the folks is a good thing. So that doesn't have a lot to do with planning, but it is nice to have that plan to do that by the end of your whole project. So we're going to talk more later about the kinds of things that you're planning for, but the big things are you want to make sure that you have a rough estimate, at least budget, so that you know that you've got enough money. Some grants are going to require matching funds. Some grants require that you do certain things, to have certain events, whatever. You need to make sure you have the money to do that. You need a schedule. And when we go through, the next few slides are going to be grant requirements. They all have due dates. So when you're doing a grant, your schedule is pretty much already laid out for you. You know when everything is due, and you need to work backwards from that, figuring out what you need to do in order to get to that point. And I'll talk a little bit about some tools in a bit that help you do that scheduling out and backtracking to make sure that you have enough time to get everything done and you're not in a mad scramble at the last 2 weeks of the project going, I've got so much to do. So scheduling helps, budgeting, scheduling, and then just the project documentation, the actual plan. Most grants require some kind of application materials. You have to explain what it is you want to do. And that application can function as a project plan. It basically, it's the amount of money you're asking for, so it gives you kind of your budget area, the money that you're going to have available to you. Again, the project has a due date, so you've got your schedule, and then the project plan is all of your activities that are going to take place as a result of this grant. So the programs that you're going to put on, the materials you're going to buy, the improvements you're going to make, whatever it is that you're getting your money for, whatever you're going for this grant to do, that those application materials can really do a good job of being those project plan documents. So we will jump into a few different kinds of grants and what is required for a lot of grants. The Dollar General grants that I have up here on the screen are, I think, it says right there, must be a 501c3 nonprofit school or library, so you don't have to be a 501c3 if you're a library, and be within 15 miles of a Dollar General store or distribution center. You know how few of you are not within 15 miles of a Dollar General? It's going to be the vast majority of the folks in this room have a Dollar General that's close, and they do literacy grants almost every year. So this is a good source, but they also have a pretty streamlined process for getting those grants. So they always have a deadline to apply, and that's going to be your first hard date in your schedule, right? So you're going to note the deadline. This is a grant for earlier this year, so we've already passed the deadline for this one. But like I said, they do these every year, so next year. They also have report dates, and these are going to be your final drop dead dates. The grant activities need to be done, the report needs to be written, and it needs to be to the granting organization by the date here. And so that's going to be, when you're setting out your schedule, you've got your application date, you've got your report date. Those are your two hard, set in stone, not changeable things. And then it's going to have requirements. So there are eligibility requirements. Almost every organization that gives money has some sort of eligibility. Like I said, the Dollar General one is pretty everybody. But you also have to, they like the literacy initiatives. They have specifics each year. I think that changes this last part. They kind of point towards different things. So you want to make sure that your stuff, you're looking at these eligibility requirements and the requirements for the money when you're filling out that application. Dollar General, again, it just has a real quick, you've got an application. It's fill it out on the web, and it doesn't, it's just basic information, your name, who you're applying on behalf of, your library, the nearest Dollar General store address, because they do mean that 15 miles. Kind of information about your organization, how long you've been in existence, and then information about the project that you want that, again, is targeted toward the eligibility requirements there. And so you do all this and you say, yes, I'm to the best of my knowledge, I am giving you the information that is correct. And that's just the first step. Then there's a community summary. And remember, Kim Priest talked about having all of that put together so that you don't have to go searching for it every time. So you have the community summary, project design and evaluation. Again, this is kind of just a description of the project. Resource capacity, if you've done that feasibility survey, you've already got the resource capacity information, so that's there. Budget information, what are you going to do with the money? The approval of your board and or executive chair. The U.S. Patriot counterterrorism compliance, I think that's a checkbox, but it's there. And then a summary. And at that point, you are done with the grant application and you just have to wait for approval or not. Other grants are maybe less, have fewer requirements. The NECLS grant opportunity that we had this year, we had a program goal. And again, that's what you're aiming your materials at. You want to fulfill the goal of the funder, whatever that might be. And then we had criteria, things that are required in order to get the money. Ours is much less onerous, I guess, than the Dollar General. I don't think the Dollar General grants are crazy big, but they're asking for some information. NECLS, we ask for much less. And then you have to agree to all that. And then you provide, in this case, this is kind of the sort of things that we talked about in that Dollar General grant, the budget, there it is, the schedule, plans, your plans for your project. So that's the process of planning, and the process of pulling all of that together is useful here. So if you're going for both a NECLS grant and a Dollar General grant, you're using the same information. And that is reuse, reduce, recycle. Recycling that information, there's nothing wrong with it. So we also require reporting. I don't know of a granting organization that doesn't require some sort of report about how you've used their money, and we do that as well. And then the resources, that's just, again, that feasibility study. You are sure that the plan you are presenting is going to actually be feasible for your organization. Oh, I went the wrong way, sorry. I did that one. I tell you what, yeah, okay, sorry. This one I almost took out because I was going to do this in February. the first time I did this presentation, and it was canceled due to weather. And then IMLS grant opportunities are no more. But I did want to mention, this is a national funder when they are funding. And national funders, your big foundations, they're going to require a lot more than Dollar General and Nichols. And so bigger projects, bigger grant requests are going to require more work on your part. And that's just kind of the way it works. IMLS grant opportunities, they have a deadline, a link to an application that is very similar to the Dollar General one, just no bigger. Program overview, they have the application process all laid out for you. They have all of that information, and I've got the link there, but again, it's not terribly useful right at the moment. But those things are required. And then IMLS grants have 2 phases, which is, oops, keeping up with the notes, sorry. They have 2 phases. So I'm currently working on a collaborative collection development project with NISO, the National Institute of Standards, no, National Information Standards Organization. I think that's it. Anyway, we're working on collaborative collection development, kind of like what we do here at Next, and making it easier. And phase 1 of the IMLS funded project was to come up with best practices. Phase 2 is to come up with the prototype of a software middleware that will talk to different ILSs and let people collaborate from different organizations. And then phase 3 is actually creating the software. We just finished up phase 1 this month. Actually, the end of this month is the end of phase 1. Phase 2 and 3 are now up in the air. They're not going to be funded. So we're not sure exactly where that's going, but as a traditional IMLS grant, we had to break it into, well, I had nothing to do with the pulling the grant together. I'm just doing the helping work on the best practices. But they, when they wrote the grant, had 3 phases, broke it out. It's a multi-year thing. It's a huge grant. Was a big amount of money for libraries. And it requires, in this case, there are 3 people who are managing the grant because it's a big project and it's a big ask. And they have more people handling it than maybe you would have to worry about with a Nichols grant or a Dollar General grant. But I just wanted to kind of, they weren't really in order, but the very small, medium-sized, and large grants, they all require the same kind of information. Just bigger grants are going to require more of it and maybe more detailed. And that is all stuff that you pull together when you're doing your planning. So other things that you need to think of when you're doing your planning, and Carrie, again, she mentioned this with letters of support that she was getting from some of her folks. If you're partnering with another organization, and a lot of granting organizations really, really like the idea of partners. They want to get as many organizations to be improved by their money as possible. So partnering is always, almost always, a benefit for a lot of these, and some it's a requirement. So if you've got partners, you are looking for letters of intent, and that's, we intend to do this, we intend to provide this information or this resource or whatever it is your partners are providing, which is a little different than letters of support, which is we support you, yay, but they're not necessarily promising money or help or that kind of thing. You want data analysis. Again, this is your community demographics. One of the things we talk about when we talk about grants with folks is not only what your library's strategic plan is, but what's your school's strategic plan, what's your city's strategic plan. Those are things that maybe the library can pull 1 or 2 things from the school's strategic plan to help, and that just makes the impact of the funding bigger. So that kind of thing, it's managing to get that information is part of your data analysis, part of pulling together all that information. And then budget development, again, just sitting down and running the numbers. And I am somewhat famous for there's no math in librarianship. There is math in librarianship, unfortunately. As many times as I say it, it's not true. Running your budget is a necessity, and being able to keep track of the money that is coming in, especially if you've got partners kicking in some, if you've got matching donation requirements for the grant, like they will give you 1,000, but you have to come up with 1,000. You have to be able to prove that you came up with your part, and you have to show receipts, and you have to keep all of that information, and that's all part of your budget management, which is part of course, your project. So, and I am moving a little faster. I didn't talk about the IMLS grant as much as I intended to. Sorry. So once you've got the grant in hand, you have your acceptance letter, you have done all of your planning work, you've written your application, you've sent everything in, you've got the yay, we're going to give you money. Now what do? Well, your project plan is your grant application. You have already laid out what you want to do. I'm in the KLA Intellectual Freedom Committee this year, and we put in a grant for $10,000 to ALA, asking for help. ALA was giving out grants for helping to put together a hotline for book challenges in Kansas. So if somebody comes to your library and challenges a book, you can report it to KLA, and then we will help you report it to ALA, and there's a whole process. We went ahead and went for the grant because even if we didn't get the grant, the process of writing everything out and doing the planning work to get it going and making that project plan for the grant funders was going to be useful whether we got the 10,000 or not. We did get the 10,000, but even we were prepared to do the work to make it happen, because there's something about that planning process that clarifies and lays out what you need to do. And even if, like with the IMLS thing, even though we're not sure where the funding is coming, the project is laid out. If we can find alternate funding, if we can maybe get some in-kind donations of coders, that kind of thing, we can still do the project, even maybe if IMLS doesn't fund it. And that was kind of what we were thinking with this KLA grant. Even if ALA does not fund our helpline, we can still have a plan for going. So that project plan is useful whether you get the grant or not. It's just a great way to clarify and lay out your thoughts. We're going to talk a little bit in a minute about work breakdown structures. They're just task lists. Project management, the Book of Knowledge, which is the Bible for project managers, says that each little task package should be 8 hours of work. I think for most of us, we don't do projects that big. And so I will tell you now, I'm a pragmatic person. I'll take their rules and do what I want. It's my project. I get to do it however I want. If you follow the getting things done philosophy, his thing is project is any 2 actions. So if I have to make a call and I have to look up the phone number first, that's a project. I'm not quite that, don't quite go that far. But somewhere in the middle, your work breakdown structure is just a task list. And those tasks should be broken down, not necessarily to look up the phone number, make the call level, but get information, break it down to a level that makes sense for you. If you are a very detail-oriented and very precise person and you want to break it down to every single little task, that's grand. You don't have to, though. Especially in the planning process, just getting the high level, I need to write a report, I need to have this information together, I need to have a meeting on this day to talk with my staff about the new collection and how we're going to do, I just kind of have those tasks that need to be done laid out. Gantt charts are another project artifact, I suppose, and they are just schedules, but they're schedules laid out in a graphical fashion so that you have your resources, your people, on one side, and then your tasks and time on the other. And that is a way to see who's doing what and when things need to get done. And you'll hear terms, I heard Carrie mention deliverables. She talked about deliverables in her presentation. Milestones are a stopping point, a set point in your schedule. So if there is that middle thing somewhere in, 6 months in, you need to have a report to your grant funder. If it's a very long grant, that's a milestone. And if you need to make sure it's on your schedule so that you're getting things done on time. If you have things that have to be done in a particular order, the first things are milestones for the second and third, they're dependents. And so those are things that need to go on your schedule, and a Gantt chart puts them in there with graphical prettiness, I guess. Deliverables are just anything that you're producing. So if you are buying a new collection, your collection is your deliverable. If you are writing a report at the end of the grant, which, like I said, almost every grant funder requires, that's a deliverable. Things that you're doing. I know not too long ago, either Sabetha or Seneca put together a musical garden. And the deliverable was the actual, the instruments going out in the back. But then they also had a party to welcome the musical garden into their library and introduce their patrons to the whole thing. So those are all, everything that you're doing in service of the grant, those are deliverables, and they go into your schedule as part of your Gantt chart. You can also put into the Gantt chart money spent. Usually your budget is separate, and they're two different documents, but I have seen people put in so the money, we need to have 30% of the funds expended by this date, and 60% by this date, and 100 by this date. That's something that can go in the Gantt chart so that everything is in one document. And again, I'm going to show you a document here explaining it a little better, I hope, in a minute. So, but the point is, these are tools that project managers, as they're coming up with their best practices, have come up with, and that we can use to help manage our grants. Okay, I mentioned the work breakdown structure. This is kind of an example. I always see them in hierarchical form like this, which is really easy to do in PowerPoint. Organization chart in PowerPoint pulls up this exact sort of chart. You can also just do them as lists. But the idea is that you have big tasks. So task 1, your top level work package, is get the application in for the project grant. Task 2, the big level project, is actually work on the project. And then you break those tasks down into smaller and smaller pieces until it makes sense to you. Like I said, the standard, if you're taking the test to become a project manager, the answer is they should be about 8 hours of work, at least. They can be bigger. But if you're not taking the test, it can be any size you want because it's your project, right? And I mentioned the Gantt chart. I did, I don't know if, how many of you are fans of, oh, and I've lost his last name, the Dresden File books. Butcher, Jim Butcher, thank you. He and his wife are both authors. His wife was an engineer, though, and she writes trashy romance. So Mike reads my husband reads Jim Butcher and I read Shannon Butcher. So she once came to the library I used to work at and talked about her writing process. She plots her books out with a Gantt chart because she's an engineer and that's what she is used to. And so she lays out her her plot points as a Gantt chart and makes sure everything is laid out. What you can do if you're not writing a trashy romance novel is lay out those tasks. And in the work breakdown structure, I did put like the 1.1, 1.1.1, 1.1.2.1, as far down as you want to go. That can go right here so that you can connect those two. Your tasks, again, 8 hours is the standard, but you do you. The task owner, that's your resource person that's going to be responsible. So you're also keeping track of staff and what your staff are doing here. Start date, due date. This right here is I think it's a Google Sheets actually, template. Excel has free templates that pull up Gantt charts. So if you put in your start date and your due date, it's going to figure the duration for you. That's what using these lovely templates helps with. And then it also, if you tell it how much of the task is complete, I guess I could use the other screen, but it will go through and color in the blocks and let you know. So in week 3, we're 50% done with, I can't see, task 7. And so at a quick glance, you can see where you are. If you're keeping track of what's going on, and this is part of your command and control part of the project, right? The making sure everybody's on track and keeping all of this up. You can see at a glance what's done, what needs to be done, who's responsible for doing it. And so the Gantt chart is just a graphical form of keeping everything together and making it easy for you to follow. Like I said, this is a Google Drive template. The Excel has templates. There's a website called, I think, Tom's Planner that has free Gantt charts. You can put your stuff, your information in, and it will format it all for you all nicely. But they're pretty easy to pull together. And if you have basic Excel skills, you will be able to fill in the information and make it kind of a central place for you to go, a central source of truth for your project. Everything is there. So some tips in the many years I've spent doing grants. I actually got into figuring out project management because I spent a summer at my previous library transferring us from Microsoft Outlook hosted in this library to Google Gmail and changing our PC reservation software from, I don't know what we were using, I think SAM to Envisionware. And I scheduled them, because I'm an idiot, over the same summer break. And so I was juggling those two things. I was like, there's got to be a way to do this that does not cause me to go insane. At this point, I'm still not 100% sure it didn't cause it, but I did manage to figure out, we got things done. We got, the Gmail got switched over and the PC Envisionware was installed and things got done. But I got real interested in how projects like this are managed effectively so that they will be successful. I know I've read a statistic, and I can't come up with the exact number, but it's in the 60s, the percentage of projects that fail. And again, I'm going to go back to that. Feasibility studies will help that. If you know you can't do it, you don't start, that's a success. But some other tips that help you with success, make your tasks atomic. And I know I just said that project management says 8-hour tasks, and now I'm saying make them atomic, make the tasks as small as possible so that they're clear. One of the biggest reasons for procrastination is that tasks are unclear. You look at it and you go, I have no idea what I need to do here. I don't know where to start. I'm going to go clean out the refrigerator. And so that is, that is, instead of writing the proposal here, which seems like a big task and has a lot of moving parts, and maybe you're not sure exactly where you want to start with that, you have it laid out. Okay, well, I need to gather the data, and I need to create a budget, and I need to write a rough outline of the plan, and I need to do this, and I need to do that. Even write a rough outline is kind of big. It's not particularly atomic. So, but you just keep going over and over the task list until it is at the size where they are biteable, where you can look at it and say, I know what needs to be done at this point. If you're not capable of going through and saying, okay, I know what needs to be done, then maybe there's some more planning that needs to happen so that you become more clear about the project that you're doing. But I don't know how many of you are checkers. You like having those tick boxes and you say done, done. I will sometimes write things on my to-do list. I've forgotten. I'm like, oh yeah, I need to do this. And then I'll go write it down so I can check it off. It's a motivating thing for me. For a lot of people, that works. So having those discrete tasks that you can say, okay, I'm done, I've checked it off, move on to the next thing, that is a motivating, action. Also wanted to talk a little bit about risk in projects. For your big projects, like the one Carrie talked about today, the risk mitigation, knowing what can go wrong in a big project like that, there's a lot that can go wrong. The economy can tank in the middle of your project, or I don't know, maybe a huge pandemic happens and everybody has to stay home for 6 months. And things happen. And so you can never completely avoid those risks, but the more you do to contemplate what might go wrong and how you might be able to affect those things, the better off you'll be. Most of the time, listing out risks makes them less dangerous because you're thinking, at least even in the back of your head, well, okay, well, I want to get this, small project done, and I've got 3 staff members, and it's flu season. So what are the chances that all 3 are going to be healthy the entire project? So maybe I give myself another couple of weeks, just so that if folks start going down, hopefully one after the other, not all at the same time, but you have a little bit of, what's going to happen, what to do. Or you have volunteers that can come in and pick up the slack when your staff are sick. Or you may have some other board members may be able to step in. There may be something you can do, but it's best to have those things kind of in the back of your head when they happen, because they will. We all know that staff's going to get sick and things are going to happen. And so having that already considered and already thought of is a great way to mitigate those risks. So, and then analysis paralysis. I know I have said a couple of times, there's no math in librarianship. I'm about to do math. I'm not, however, going to do it in my head. I've done it already on my notes. So you don't have to, I did it with a calculator. So analysis paralysis, it's very easy to spend all of your time planning. And I've just spent 40 minutes talking about how important it is to plan. And now I'm going to say, but don't plan too much, because you do eventually have to do the work, right? So analysis paralysis is a thing. And the rule of thumb for projects is you want to spend 10% of your project time on planning. So if you have a project that's going to go 3 months, you are planning on spending 1 day a week during those 3 months doing your project. That's 12 days, which comes out to 96 hours if you have the full 8-hour day, which is 9.6 hours of planning time. So there's no way I was going to do that in my head. So that's all. And that is just a basic, that's how you kind of figure, okay, I'm going to spend 10 hours planning this project and no more. Once those 10 hours are done, I'm going to get started. And maybe you'll have to circle back and plan out some part of it a little bit more extensively once you get started. But that's at least going to get you going and will help prevent that analysis paralysis, which is definitely a thing. All right, yeah. One more. Okay, so some methods from project management that come in handy. I don't know about you guys estimating things. As human beings, we tend to suck. I mean, we're just not very good at estimating in general. So there are some built-in best practices that project management tools and tips have. And one of them is critical path planning. And that is laying out okay, so this project, the grant report is due in 6 months. I have 6 months to do this. Working backwards, what's the longest or the shortest amount of time I'm going to reasonably get this done? And so you figure that out, and then you go, okay, well, I have a little padding time. I'm going to maybe give myself an extra week here because if that's flu season and if my staff are sick, I'll need that week there. And then you start kind of giving yourself a little bit of padding. But the critical path is the absolute. If you start one activity, the second you finish the first activity, it's from bump, 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 planned out, and you know exactly how long things are going to take. And then you start, like I said, padding things because of those risk management thoughts that you've had. So critical path, there are others. And I'm having a hard time coming up with the name for estimating. There are like 10, if you do a Google search, you can find them, but there are lots of methods for estimating. But one of the ways that I do it is paying attention. Next time you do something, how long did it take? Put a timer up. How long exactly did it take for you to write that email to a donor? How long did it take for you to open up Canva and come up with a bookmark? How long did it take to do whatever it is you did? And make note of that because that's much more realistic than, oh, I'll knock this out in an hour. I cannot tell you how often I've said, that's not a problem. I'll have it done in an hour. And 3 hours later, I look up and I'm like, oh, oops. That took longer than I thought. So having that data, that knowing how long it takes you to do stuff is important. Knowing the current price of things, unfortunately, right now, knowing the current price is not that useful because that's going to change, possibly quickly. So, but at least knowing the current price can get you started. And that's how you're going to estimate your budget, is by going through and pricing everything out as it is right now. Normally, you would maybe pad that a little. Now you might want to pad it a lot, just because we don't know. So, but you can't do any padding if you don't know what the current price is. So that's one way to do that. And then how many person hours will you need to complete each task in the project? Just going through and taking that information. It takes me, 45 minutes to write an email that's so long. Okay, taking that into account, how long is it going to take me to do these things? And then give a little bit of padding. You might notice I'm suggesting a lot of padding. You don't want to take it too far, but we are, as a species, poor estimators of time and effort. We tend to think that, as humans, that we can do things quicker and more efficiently than it usually works out. And so padding really is kind of necessary. So that was there are different ways to come up with those padding numbers, but you want to do enough to give you a little bit of breathing room, but not so much that your funders go, wait, what? So that's that sweet spot. The documentation, using the tools from earlier. If you have a Gantt chart, if you have a work breakdown structure, if you have a project plan that is essentially your project your grant application, you have a pretty good shot at documenting your project. And again, this is what I was talking about when I mentioned Carrie's comment about building projects being a once in a generation kind of thing. If you're documenting your project with this kind of information, if you're keeping a Gantt chart, if you've got the project plan all laid out and everything's going well, you've got something to hand off to the library down the street that comes to you saying, okay, so how did your building project go? And if you have a big project coming up that someone else has done, they will have something to show you to say, okay, well, this is what we thought was going to happen. And this was our original Gantt chart. And then this was the end Gantt chart. And you'll see we underestimated this, we overestimated that. And that kind of documentation is unbelievably useful, both for other people and for you. Next time you do a project, you can go back and say, okay, I figured it would take me about 45 minutes to write your standard, please give me money email. It actually ended up taking me almost an hour. So I'm going to give myself an hour for doing that. So that documentation is useful both for other people and for yourself. Yeah, so save the charts, the grants, everything. And as Kim said, she likes to keep everything in a single folder on her computer. She also said that she has a notebook that she tucks all the receipts and everything into so that everything is in a single place. And I think I kind of hinted at that when I was talking about the Gantt chart, but their single source of truth is very important. When I was talking to somebody the other day about my calendar, and I said, I put personal stuff on my calendar, my work calendar, because if I don't have a single source of truth calendar, I miss stuff. I have to have everything in one spot. And so that is kind of your goal here, is to have a single source of truth for this project. Everything goes into it, and that is going to be what you use to make the project happen. And then at the end, how you will make your next project happen more effectively and more efficiently, and how maybe other folks can get help on their projects. So in that case, you want to write that final report for your project with the next grant administrator in mind. Even if you're not the person writing the grant for your library next time, you want to have that person in mind. And I say this all the time as well. Future Robin is not the same person as present Robin. I will write a note to myself on a piece of paper and 3 days later come back and go, wow, I have no idea what I meant. because I'm in a totally different context. I'm a totally different person at that point. I've had 3 sleeps. My dog has done something crazy, and I've got to think about it. And so you want to write these reports for someone who's never read it before. You don't want to write it for you because the you that reads it is still going to be somebody who, they might have a vague familiarity with what happened, but they're not going to have the same information in their head that you do. So that was it. That is the basics. Yeah, that's it. Okay. The basics of project management in a super fast and dirty nutshell. So we've got 15 minutes for questions, or Robin.
So I'll just be completely honest, grants are not in my wheelhouse. I have sat in on a couple of webinars and gone to a couple of workshops because that's going to be in my wheelhouse in the future. So I'm just curious from Robin and from you guys, that I know that a lot of you have written a lot of grants. How much are you using AI in the grant application process? Just curious.
Absolutely.
Okay. But how much? Like just to polish, or I mean, I use it for writing to polish things now, but it's not actually a.
I did it like, I go to ChatGPT and say, write a short grant proposal with this, and this.
Okay.
Because like the Dollar General one has like a character count or something, if I remember correctly. But I need it to sound at least somewhat professional and not Texas Pick, like sometimes turns out to be. I don't want y'all to come out in my right.
Right.
And so yeah, I use ChatGPT quite a bit to just polish what I'm trying to say and make it, understandable for one.
And that's honestly, if you're going to use AI for grants, that's the way to use it. Do not use ChatGPT as a search engine. Don't use it to look up data. It's right, right. And I pay for a $20 a month ChatGPT subscription because I use it in my classes. So I can upload stuff. So I will give it data and say, can you analyze this? Can you tell me? But out of that data, if I just go up and say, what's my city's demographics? If it can find stuff, grand. If it can't, it'll make it up. Because, yeah.
Tell it, like, do not make anything up.
Mhm.
Only use information you can verify. And do you think I'm missing anything?
Yeah.
Like, what else should I put there?
Yeah, what
It's
else?
It's actually
Mhm.
really interesting.
And a word of caution, anytime you use ChatGPT, a lot of times it will start with, I hope this finds you well. And so if you receive an email that starts with, I hope this finds you well, you know that that was written with ChatGPT. So when you use ChatGPT,
Edit.
remove that line.
Mhm. Edit. Make it sound more like yourself. I actually went through a process a couple of weeks ago. I uploaded an article I'd written and a chapter from a book I'd written and said, can you describe this style that this writing is? And it did. Gave me a paragraph describing the style. And then I copied that and put it into the ChatGPT settings and said, can you write in this style? And so ChatGPT tends to sound more like I write professionally. I mean, I'm going to start with y'all, myself as well. But you can tell it how to write. Again, that might be a paid thing. I'm not sure if it's available in the free, but it is kind of handy. And I did notice I'm doing this MPLA Leadership Institute thing next week, and I asked ChatGPT to help me with the speech that I wanted to give at the beginning of the welcoming thing, and it nailed it. It sounds just like me. I read through it and I was like, wow, okay, not a whole lot of editing required. It did not start with, I hope this finds you well. So there are ways to adjust that. But yeah, there are phrases that ChatGPT likes, and people will notice those. If they get a lot of grant applications that use those phrases, they'll start to pick up on, oh, that's, I know what's going on here. It's a great tool. It's unbelievably useful. It is, however, when I see people, I went on ChatGPT and I looked up this data heavy thing and it says, I'm like, no, that's what Google's for. And Google's not great. I mean, Google's not perfect either. You're going to find misinformation on Google as well, but ChatGPT literally will just make stuff up if it can't. And that's what it's supposed to do. I mean, it's not meant to be a search engine. It's meant to be a large language model, whatever that means. So,
Thank you so much.
no, no problem.
Okay, then your announcements from Dan. Are
Oh.
there any other questions? Or have you just
The book that just came out last week was Neil Schumann's Library Technology Companion. It is actually the 7th edition of the book. Someone else wrote the first 6 editions. I just went through and basically tore it down and redid it. So it's a brand new revision, completely updated. We do have a copy in the professional collection, not signed. But, and I've got a copy in my desk in my office on my bookshelf. If you promise to bring it back, I'll let you borrow it if the professional copy's in use. So yeah, it is available. She hasn't sent out an email letting, I think it came in Friday, right? Yeah, I got my copies, my author copies came in on Saturday. She's like, oh, hey, your book showed up. And I'm like, I don't have it. So it came Saturday morning. So I've got it now. All right.
thank you so much.
Thank you.